Hello everybody, this is Jasmina, and in this video I'm going to talk about again the third part, that's 2C, of the Bazi elements and your Daymaster. Again, please don't put your birth date and time in the comments. I don't do Bazi, so this isn't going to help you, and you increase your chance for identity theft. Now, I'm more in line with the practitioners who say you should go with your strengths when you're dealing with life. So it's what you're good at in your Batsa that you should pursue. And you only learn the specific skills in your weak areas if you need to get the job done. And if you don't need to, then you can work on it on your free time, but don't get too concerned about it. Now, when it comes to high levels, which this is going to talk about the high levels, I already talked about the low levels in 2B. So basically, the healthy high levels are between 60 and 85%. And if you have any 10 God or any element in this range, you usually don't exhibit any negative things, and you have a real skill that you can use to make money. Now, but there is also unhealthy, or at least potentially unhealthy high levels if you're above 85% up to 100. So I'm going to focus most on the 85 to 100% because this is where you're more likely to have an issue. So the unhealthy, or at least potentially unhealthy high levels, this can be again in an element in Joey Yap's structures, the spider web looking chart, or in one of the 10 gods, which he calls profiles. And this typically exhibit themselves when a person is under a good deal of stress. So this is when they use their strong skill as their fallback when maybe they need a different skill. And this is what can give them problems. Now, the healthy high or unhealthy high levels tend to lead people to make more of themselves. And this is because they have a natural talent beyond the norm. So they have a higher potential in that particular area. It usually means they have a lower potential in some other area of their life. But if they know what that strong suit is and they run with it, they usually make more out of their lives than, let's say, the quote unquote average person. Now, if all of your elemental structures, in the Joey Yap analysis, and that's the one that looks like a spider web, if they're all below 60%, you almost certainly don't have a healthy or unhealthy high levels of any element. And this is actually very, very normal. It is somewhat rare that you're going to have a really high level in the structures. You may have a high level in one of your 10 gods, even if you have everything below 60. But sometime you are going to be above this average, 40 to 60%. And this is quite normal. This is nothing to be unhappy about, because as long as you're above 40, you can compete with more than half the population. Now, what I'm going to address here is people that are above 60, but really those that are above 85%, because that's when their strong suit can overpower what they really need to do to solve a problem. Now, we are going to look at both the structures and the 10 gods. And when we do, we look at the natal values. And just repeating this because Joey Yap has both the annual and natal. The natal don't change, the annual do. So the reason why we're using Joey Yap is he presents this in a very simple way, where we can see, is it 85 to 100%. Everybody else that I have found doesn't do it this way, and so it's very hard to interpret. But it may not be perfect, but this is at least a good start. Now, most other, in fact, all other that I know of, Bazi calculators out there express it differently. That is, they just express it in terms of a number, and you don't know what the maximum number is, or what a high level is. You don't know because they don't tell you. And this is something that um, is very hard to find out. So let's just start talking about what are indications that a high level of a 10 God or an element, but more likely the 10 God, is negatively affecting your life. So here we're looking at unhealthy high levels, what they might mean. So if you have an unhealthy high level of wood, you tend to become overwhelmed because you take on too much. And so you don't get things done because you're always worried about this and that, and you have too much going on, and you actually don't do a good job on any particular thing because you've got too much on your plate. So if it's fire, if you have an overabundance of fire, you usually work very, very hard, but you often can ignore your health. So you don't eat properly, you don't sleep enough, so you become burnout, and then you might become ill. But at least you become burnout, and then you don't do anything for a while. You have to veg out for a week, and so you are your output isn't very continuous. If you have a high level of earth, remember the stability is the yang version and the nurturing is the yin version of earth. If you have too much of the yang version, you're often too rigid. You're too stubborn. You won't change. You're just can't adapt to new situations very well. And if it's instead high levels of the yin version of earth, you tend to be too controlling. So this is really hard if you have kids. You become a helicopter parent. You won't let them do what they want to do, even when they become teenagers, and that causes a lot of conflict. So this can be quite negative, um, and you can try to control people that you have no you have no good reason for trying to control, and that can cause problems in friendships. So this is a pretty big one. For metal, you can be too focused, so it's a lot like too much fire. You can become burned out, but you can also focus too much on just one aspect of a problem when maybe you could solve the problem easily by focusing on a different aspect of the problem. So you just too focused and can't see the big picture. And if it's too much water, basically you're too adaptable, you change too much, you basically don't complete anything before you move on. And so you get nothing done. And so this is actually very bad because you have nothing to show for all the work that you've done. Now, this applies largely to people between 85 and 100%. This is when it's most likely for it to show up. It can show up below that, but it's usually not that common unless everything else is low and you only have that one high level. And then maybe it could show up below 85%. So again, I've shown you this before. This is my chart, and I have a high level, and I happen to be a wood day master, so this is water. It is high, but it's a healthy high. It's not very far off from being unhealthy, but it's still in the healthy range. So, and this is water. Now, if it was higher, there may be a bigger chance that I don't complete things, but that doesn't seem to be my problem. Um, I do a lot, yes, but I do complete things because it drives me crazy when I don't. So, um, so even though I have quite a high level of water, the negative effects of water do not seem to appear in my life. Now, when I was younger, that might be possible, but most kids are a little less disciplined too. So now let's look at the 10 gods. And this will be the bar chart on the right-hand side of the second page of the Joey app analysis. He calls them profiles, uh, but most other people call this the 10 gods. And I'm trying to stick with what most people will call them in their blogs. So again, we need to look at the natal levels. It's always been on the left of the two bar charts, but he could switch it up at any time. So look at the labels on top to make sure you're reading the natal one. So again, anything between 60 and 85% is considered healthy high. Anything above 85% is potentially an unhealthy high level. It doesn't necessarily be unhealthy. It depends on a lot of circumstances, mostly what environment you're in. That is, whether it becomes healthy or unhealthy. But this bar chart comes from an elemental analysis of your natal Batsa. This is true for all of the number 2 that I've been talking about, all the 2 videos, 2A, 2B, and 2C. Now, again, different methods can result in different values, but because we don't have a good grasp, or at least I don't have a good grasp on what is considered a normal value, I don't know how to interpret these others. But Joey App does that for us, even though he seems to do something different than everybody else. It's at least a good start. Now, healthy high levels are rarely a problem, and they're typically an advantage because you are better than average, but you're not extreme. So let's go through these things just like I did for low values. So if you have a very high value for the friend, you also have difficulty with relationships, but this is due to basically clinginess, neediness. The thing is you want to, or you have a very great need to connect to other people, but your desire to connect is very high and kind of like very extreme. So when you find somebody you like, you want to be like the best friend ever. And most people can't go from high, let's have lunch, to being soulmates in a week. I mean, that's just too fast for most people. So you also can end up lonely because you can't get the connection that you want. And most people can't handle the speed and the depth of your connection, both at the same time. They could probably handle maybe the speed, but they can't handle the depth, or they can handle the depth, but they can't handle the speed. So you're just overwhelm them, and and um, and they can't, they feel like they can't respond in a way that you need them to. So they feel like they're failing you. So they just said, I've got other things to do, kind of thing, and then you feel like you lose them. This is a very difficult thing to deal with because you're so intense, and most people are not that intense because they've learned it takes a while to build trust, and maybe you're a little too trusting. Now, how can this hurt you? Well, basically, in general, these type of people don't think for themselves too terribly well. They they always want to check with a friend, is this the right thing to do? Um, I think I believe that they know if it's right or not, but they want to be sure. Let's put it that way. So they don't appear to think for themselves. And you also tend to have a lack of connection at your desired level, and that can lead to loneliness and occasionally to depression. And so that's not healthy. But um, you do have to realize that most people can't handle that speed and that depth that you can. So you have to adjust to the more average people. Now, how can this help you? Well, you can actually become an extremely good counselor if you have a stable base of your own. And that's the trick, is having a stable base of your own. because this is something that might not, um, you have to be lucky to have one of these. Now, how do you improve this? Basically, learn to do things on your own, um, and basically try not to overwhelm somebody with, you know, wanting to, deepen the friendship so quickly. Most people just can't handle it. So just if you can learn to do things on your own, you don't need to do that so much. Now, if you have a high level of rob wealth, that's basically, it's easy for you to spend more than you earn. Now, you can either spend it on yourself, which is greed, or you can spend it on others. And then people tend to, they might use you. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But they look at you more as a bank that they don't have to necessarily pay back, which is bad. But you feel good about helping others. So, you know, it's kind of a double-edged sword in that respect. Now, gambling can also be an issue, at least for some people. Uh, uh, can't guarantee that, but there are certain people, especially with other combinations, that I understand that this can be a problem. Now, how can it hurt you? Well, unless you have very high moral standards, if you are spending more than you earn, that sets you up to embezzle from your company. And I think most embezzlers get caught, and they spend quite a bit of time in prison, and that pretty much ruins your life, at least for a while. And so this can be bad, um, obviously. Uh, but if but the key is, you know, not spending more than you earn, then you don't get into this kind of trouble. And of course, gambling can do that too. It can get you into a situation where embezzling seems to be the right answer. Now, how can this help you? Well, first of all, if you may have lots of friends, if this exhibits in helping others and not in greed, you're going to have plenty of friends that can help you, um, assuming, of course, you've helped them when the need arises. Asking is probably going to be very hard on your part because that's part of, you like helping others and you don't, oftentimes it's hard for you to ask for help. Um, Now, you probably can't get everything that you need from a single friend, but since you've got so many people you've helped, together they can get you out of trouble. You just have to ask, and that's the hard part. Now, if you want to improve this, basically learn to be happy with what you have rather than long for what you do not have. And if this is high, maybe you should avoid gambling because it seems like people that have gambling problems, once they start, it's very hard for them to start. They just, and it goes into this snowballing thing. And the thing is, well, it depends on where you gamble. But if you gamble in like a casino, the house has the odds by quite a bit. So you're going to lose money in the long run. You can gamble for fun, once a year, $20, that's fine. But, you know, gambling at a casino usually is not a smart move. Now, when helping others, when somebody asks for help, don't always say yes. Uh, this can be very, very hard, but um, and it may be that you feel like your situation is so much better that you have an obligation to help some others. Only help them when you have money to spare. Don't help them when this is going to be even maybe a hardship for you. Maybe you can give them part of the money, but don't give it all. If it's going to be a hardship for you, you've got to learn to say no. Now, if you have a high level of eating God, you tend not to be terribly realistic. Your head's in the clouds. You have a lot of ideas. You may not follow through um, because you just go on to the next. Oh, this is even a better idea, and it uh, you don't get stuff done. And again, all your good ideas and everything, if you don't have something to show for them, don't do the world any good. Now, how can this hurt you? Well, obviously, never finishing what you have started. I think that's pretty clear. How can this help you? Well, if you can get the fortitude to finish things, big dreams and big ideas can have a profound effect on the world. So you could really change the world. You just have to be able to finish what you start. So if you want to improve, basically you have to learn discipline. Um, Practice finishing a project, a small one, before moving on to the next. Uh, you know, this can be done. And hopefully the enjoyment you get about actually finishing the project will help you finish the next project also. So this is part of learning discipline. Now, if you have a high level of a hurting officer, basically these people are often only happy in the spotlight. In extreme cases, this can lead to narcissism. You can brag far beyond your accomplishments, which when you get caught, you usually end up in a pretty bad situation. You can lie excessively, that is beyond what is even somewhat reasonable. Um, this goes beyond bragging. I mean, just blatantly lying about something you've done that you've never done, that kind of thing. So how can this hurt you? Well, nobody likes working for a narcissist because they're basically jerks. I mean, you know, nobody likes a narcissist. Um, and nobody trusts anything you say because you lie so much. Now, how can this help you? Well, you're likely to be a good salesman. Of course, this assumes you are not seriously overselling your product because, if you lie about it too much, then, when it doesn't do what you say it will, you will, your business will not do well because nobody, no, well, people stop believing what you say. It's the same thing. You're just lying. Now, okay, how you do this? Well, you have to learn a way to deflate your ego. You may need help for this. Um, and here's the hard one. Practice being truthful, even if you believe or even know for sure that it could be harmful to your pocketbook or to your reputation. If you tell the truth, then people will start to trust you. And that will help get rid of all the problems that you may have. I mean, when people can trust what you say, then you can move forward. But if you just lie, nobody believes you, and they disregard you, and you don't get promoted, you don't get anything. You probably get fired. Now, if you have very high levels of indirect wealth, you can be too independent. You can get into serious trouble if you go beyond breaking rules to breaking laws. Um, but you also might be too far ahead of your time so that your ideas don't work either because you're thinking too far down the road. Maybe 5 years later, 10 years later, maybe after you've given up on that, somebody else comes up with the same idea and they're at the right time, and then they can have a good business from it. So basically, the worst way this could hurt you is you go beyond breaking the rules to breaking the laws. And that can get you and your company into serious trouble because most people with a high level of indirect wealth will want to have their own company. They are not very comfortable working for others. But how can this help you? Well, breaking the rules, not necessarily the laws, but the rules can lead to breakthroughs. So this is basically how science works. Uh, Although they may call them laws, they're really just rules. The laws of physics, well, they're the rules of physics. But you can, if you can look at it in a different way, that is, you don't follow the rules that are out there, this is how scientific breakthroughs often occur. And these breakthroughs can result in a better living for everybody, or a better society. I mean, it doesn't have to be in science. This can be for society. This can be for how work works. I mean, there can be all kinds of things that you can result in a better society. So, how to improve? Well, I mean, there are unjust laws out there. There are plenty of unjust laws out there. If they don't get taken off the books, maybe they're not normally enforced, but they're out there. And something happens, and all of a sudden it becomes a problem. Well, and instead of breaking the law, fight to change the law, especially when it's unfair or unjust. I wouldn't say too much about breaking the rules, because, like I say, the rules can lead to breakthroughs, if you break the rules. So, um, but you can't be too far ahead of society. It has to be kind of at the right time also. So, especially if it's a societal breakthrough. So it's sort of a balancing situation. But certainly when it comes to laws, it's better not to break them. It's better to change them. And usually, once it's pointed out why, of course, half the time you don't have to point out why the law is unjust. You just have to make sure that it gets changed. Now, if you have very high levels of direct wealth, you can actually be quite inflexible with the rules of whatever. So you can be rigid, stubborn. You can't change with the times, and you get left behind. Now, this applies more to your personal life, getting left behind, because if you're working for a company and they change the rules, you will change, but you will find it hard. But if you're forced to, you can change. So, but you do have trouble adapting to changes in the workplace because you like the rules. You don't want them to change. But how can this help? Well, if you work in a large corporation, your boss can be assured you will not bend the rules, so he can trust you. And that's a very good thing. A boss will really like you if he can trust that you are not going to break the rules. Because when you break the rules, he's ultimately the one who gets into trouble. I mean, you may get fired, but he gets into trouble. And he could get fired too. So even though he personally didn't break the rule. So this is why a boss will love you if he can be sure you're not going to bend the rules. So if you want to improve this, basically you need to learn to relax your standards for others and for yourself, because most of the people with this high level are also pretty, they're pretty strict with themselves also. So basically you need to decide what your core values are and let go of the less important ones so that you can adapt to new things. And maybe some of your core values may be seriously changed because they get challenged and you realize that you were wrong about something. And it may be a core value. Well, then you just say, okay, that core value needs to be modified. And you modify it so you can fit in and adapt to new things. Because if you don't, you get left behind. Now, if you have very high levels of the 7 killings, you often have anger management problems. Not everybody, but and maybe it doesn't come out in terms of physical anger, but it could be verbal, or you can insult people a lot. You can become violent when your ideas are challenged. Basically, it's bullying behavior. You act like a bully, um, where bullies basically solve things with their fists. Uh, of course, that usually wanes a bit as an adult because otherwise you're in jail all the time. But uh, then it usually turns to be more verbal and really highly, um, and you use like the worst words you can think of, that kind of behavior. And that's still bullying behavior. It's just a little bit more adult. Now, how can that hurt you? Well, people aren't going to discredit your ideas to your face because they don't want to deal with your anger. But you will find that they never follow your ideas because they know that if they try to, you're just going to take over, and you won't allow any changes um, to your ideas because you think you're right, and you feel like you're being challenged when somebody says, well, this is part is good, but we need to do something else about this. You won't take that. You will start arguing that no, it has to be your way or the highway kind of thing. And even if you come up with a good idea, you aren't going to be part of the thing because most people won't even listen to you anymore because you won't let them improve on your idea. And it probably can be improved. Most ideas can be. Uh, so basically, they discredit anything you say, or they, say, let's move on, that kind of thing. And it's because you just won't let your idea be modified because you think you're right and it has to be your way. And that's no way to live. Now, the good thing about this is you fight for yourself, your family, your beliefs. I mean, this also is good. Now, like I said, I have not looked at Martin Luther King's chart, but he may have had a high 7K, and that's why he was willing to risk his life and was assassinated to help improve the condition of African Americans in the United States. And, he is actually one of my biggest heroes because without him, there would be no women's movement. And without a women's movement, I wouldn't have a PhD in physics because, you know, I'm not I'm not so much above everybody else that I could have gotten a degree because you have to, before the women's movement, you had to be extremely exceptional as a woman to be able to get a PhD in physics or in any of the sciences. So if you want to improve this, and I highly recommend you do if you have high levels, is take some anger management classes or other kind of management classes, because this helps you to learn to deal with things in a better way. And learn to accept other people's opinions. Know that if somebody wants to modify your idea, that doesn't mean they're discrediting your whole idea. They're just saying, this part is good, but if we do this, it's even a better idea. And that's perfectly fine. They have the same goal you do in terms of you want to improve things. It's just that very few people come up with a perfect idea on the first shot. And and you've got to realize that. So now if you have very high levels of a direct officer, you have a tendency to become a tyrant. You don't have much flexibility. No, you really actually are very good at organizing things. That's what most of the direct, if you have at least an average or a high, but not maybe extremely high level of direct officer, you're a very good manager. You're very organized, um, and that usually is a very good thing. But if it's really high, you can't allow people to do anything in any other way. I mean, you have a set way, and that's the way it has to be done. So that's how you become a tyrant. So nobody likes working for a dictator. So if you are in a management position, you tend to have very high turnover of people working for you. And the people who stay are the people who can't get jobs someplace else. So they're not going to be the best people for the job. So you're dealing with basically with people that can't get any other work, and uh, uh, and and you're not going to have a very good output if you don't have the best people. Well, so how can this help you? Well, there are certain fields like the military where this is a very useful skill, and there are other fields too that uh, things also like police officers and firemen and stuff like this. You have some sets of rules, and you, if you follow them properly, you usually do good things. So if you want to improve this, that is what you're doing is you're weakening this, of course. You need to learn to listen to other people, take other people's suggestions seriously. Don't insist that your way is the only way that is the right way to do something. There are several right ways to do things, even in math. In mathematics, there's usually an easy way, and then there's other hard ways, but they still can get the right answer. Now, if you have very high levels of indirect resources, it's a lot like the eating God. You tend to have your head in the clouds. You can see the big picture very easily, but you can't seem to find ways to implement it into practical ways that can actually make it work and make it happen. You have no trouble with the vision. You just can't seem to actually get anything to work in real life. So, how could this hurt you? Well, unless you're the idea person, um, you in a company, most jobs require you to make something functional, and there's very few idea man jobs out there. Um, so, there's not too many jobs that you can do what you do best. So, and if you want to run your own business, there's a lot more than just the idea. So maybe you can partner with somebody who has some other skills, and you can be the idea man. But uh, it's there aren't that many jobs out there. That's the biggest thing. Is you know you've got to be able to make something functional in most cases for probably 99.9% of the jobs. Now, how can this help you? Well, you have no shortage of being able to understand what needs to be done. So so you can actually be a good leader uh, as long as you aren't the one figuring out exactly how it gets done, but you understand what needs to be done. So sometimes you can be at a bit higher level and you have somebody below that actually figures out how to make it work. So basically, that is an idea man. So that can help you. Now, um, how to improve this? Practice making any kind of idea work in real life. Start small, work your way up. This helps actually modify how you think about things and can help you really improve your ability to make things happen. And lastly, we have if you have very high levels of direct officer, you can be too analytical. You oftentimes don't understand people and their motives. You usually know what you understand yourself and what your motives are, but they're um, and other people aren't usually part of your motives. That is, you're really, you know, numbers and uh, equations and data are your thing. So how can this hurt you? Well, you don't deal with people very well, including your boss. And so you don't know what to say to your boss to have his opinion of you improve to get you a promotion. But because promotions usually mean going into something that's more management level, and you're not good with people, so it's hard to be a manager. Also, you oftentimes can't express your ideas in any ways other than numbers. And a lot of people don't understand numbers very well. They hear the numbers and it kind of goes in one ear and out the other, and they just don't really understand what it means. Now, how can this help you though? Well, there are lots of jobs out there that require high levels of analytic skills. So you have the ability to take really good paying jobs, find really good paying jobs. They are out there for people with your skills. So you you can do well. You don't usually go to like the super high, you often don't become super wealthy, but you are usually a lot better off, higher than average income. So that is the best thing here. Now, if you want to improve this, Instead of being focused on the numbers, try to spend a bit more time seeing the big picture, because sometimes this is a problem. Now, if you have a decent level of IR, especially if it's also high, then this is usually not a problem. But if it's high DR and average or low IR, then yeah, you probably don't see the big picture. So again, it depends on the details. And you may need to get some help to be able to understand people better. Uh, Oftentimes, all you really need to do is talk to people more and listen to what they say. Now, this can be kind of hard because you may be thinking of a problem that you're been trying to solve, and all you think about is equations in your head or something like this, and you stop listening. So that is where people like this often get into trouble, because they're just too analytical, and people are not very analytical on the whole. So now, in addition to seeing your levels, you should also note what Joey Yap calls the main profile, and this is on the bottom of the box that contains the profile chart. And you can also find this in the Bazi calculator site. I think most of the time they're the same, but they may not be. So it's worth it to look in both places. Now, this is often an indication of what type of job your skills are best suited to. Not what field, but what skills do you need to do the job? That is what this will tell you. So if your main profile is friend, oftentimes you're really good with counseling, good with working with children, um, good with working with people with trouble, who are have problems in their lives. If you're a Rob Wealth, you're good with helping people also. Um, this would be, I guess, a classical Peace Corps volunteer. Um, this would be this would be something they probably really would want to do. In general, you can help people in all kinds of ways. A lot of it could be counseling, but it can be other aspects, like maybe you help people find jobs in one of those um, situation where people are fresh out of prison. You help people adapt to life on the outside again. If you have an eating god, if you have that's your main profile. Basically, you're pretty artistic. Um, more background artistic, not like necessarily being uh, like being an actor or something like this. It's more a visual thing, or something you can touch or feel, or it could just be a simple new idea that people haven't thought of. So you have that ability. If it's a herding officer, basically something on stage. This could be an actor, this could be a politician, this could be a motivational speaker, um, it could be anything like that. Indirect wealth, these people tend to be very good innovators. They can be good entrepreneurs, but they're usually better innovators. Entrepreneurship takes a lot more skills than being an innovator, but they can do it. Now, direct wealth, the best thing is to work in an office, work in a large company. They have the personality that can handle this, which most people or a lot of people would not enjoy. The seven killings, these are people like police officers, military, firefighters, EMTs, people who help others um, in general. I don't know about the military. Let's say, well, they defend the country, which helps others too. So yes, that does qualify. So these are people that use their bravery to accomplish good things. Now, if you have a direct officer, you're usually a good manager or a leader. But of course, unless your father runs the company or your parents run the company, you're not very likely to be able to step into this. So you have to work your way up to it. But you will be very organized, and that usually gets you noticed. So the better you are, the quicker you move up into management. Indirect resources, these are idea people. They are visionaries. Um, these are people that can change the world with their ideas, or at least they can try. The direct officer, these often are very good as scientists, mathematicians, researchers, someone like this. Um, so I think this makes sense if you looked at the other thing. Now, your main profile may not be your highest level. Uh, that is on the Joey Up Elemental 10 God, but it'll be one of the 10 gods. So you just have to see what it says. So that's basically it. I hope this was more helpful. I think that running with your strength is a really good way to go. The only thing you have to worry about is if you're super high, and then you have to watch out. Otherwise, my best recommendation is you run with whatever is your best strength, and make the most of what you have. I'd like to thank you guys for watching.